Let's start to play around with the base design of this, just so we've got something pretty solid that we can just start adding things to on our pages. Now, if you are new to Nuxt, let's just take a really quick look around. We've got this default layout here where any content is injected in between these two. So over on our pages, for example, this index page, all of this content here that we can see over in the browser is being injected into that page. And that basically just gives you the opportunity to find out how you want your overall layout to look. For example, if you need a header at the top of the page, which we are going to do. Okay, so to get this working, let's go over to our default layout, and we can change this around or we can leave this in here. It doesn't really matter too much. We've got Tailwind installed, so we're going to be using all of our Tailwind classes. Now, inside of our default layout, we want a header just at the top of here. Before we do that, let's clear our index here. So I'm going to get rid of pretty much all of this. And what we can also do is get rid of all of these sample styles as well. And let's just create out a div in here with index in the middle. So that just gives us the following. So just a really, really empty project now. Okay, so we want a header just up here. Let's break this out into a new component first of all. And all of our components live in this components directory. I'm going to go ahead and delete the logo component because we're not using that anymore. And instead, let's create a theheader.view file out. And the reason I prefix this with the is header is a very generic term, could be an HTML element name, so we say the. It's a one element that we're going to include pretty much everywhere. Okay, let's create our template in here and let's just get started on creating out our header. I'm actually going to switch this over to a header element, and that's exactly the same reason that we didn't call this header, because it conflicts with an HTML element. Okay, so this is our header. Let's just go over to our default layout here and include the header. Now with Nuxt, this will be automatically discovered from the components directory. So what we don't need to do is in our script down here, go ahead and import it as we normally would. You can do that if you want to. And with Nuxt, if you come over to nuxt.config.js, you can actually turn auto import components off if you want to. We're going to leave that on just because it's a little bit easier, but it's entirely up to you if you want to change that. So now you can see that we've got header, and any other pages that we create will all include that header because it's part of that default layout. So in terms of the header then, let's go ahead and start to add some classes to this with Tailwind. Of course, if you're not using Tailwind, you're just going to want to style this up how you want. So we're going to set a padding on the Y to 6. In terms of the Flexbox model, we're going to apply flex, and we're going to say items center to center them vertically, and we're going to say justify between to center two elements. So we're going to have left and right, or align two elements left and right on the page. So you can see we've got our left hand side here and our right hand side here. Now at the moment this isn't quite looking good because we don't have a container set. Let's go over to our default layout and give the overall wrapper to this with a class of container. Now what that will do, if we just take a look at that now and we inspect this, that's going to apply some styles here. So let's have a look, and you can see that this gives a max width for our container. Now what we want to do is add a little bit of padding on the left and the right hand side. My screen size for recording is quite small, so you can't really see this. If you're working on a larger screen, this is going to look a bit better. But in terms of the container, what we want to do is set MX to auto, so the margin on the x-axis to auto, so this is centered, and we want to set the padding on the x to 6, so that just pulls things out a little bit. If I were to just make this a little bit smaller, that's probably how it's going to look over on your screen. Okay, so let's go back to the header and just start to add in some of the items that we want to see in here. So we first of all want some kind of logo in here, or some kind of text for our logo. So let's create out a Nuxt link actually, because we can link this up now. And that Nuxt link is just going to be called jobs. Let's go and apply our to prop to this, and that goes through to the index page. So again, if you're new to Nuxt, this page is called index, and that's the name that will be auto added for us. Now in terms of this, let's have a look, and we've just got a jobs link there, which when we click goes through back to the home page. Pretty straightforward. Now, I think we could just get away with some right-hand links here, so let's just add these in here. And let's go ahead and just add some plain anchors in here with some of the stuff that we want. So the first one that we want is a login link, and we also want a manage listings link for when we are signed in, and we also want a logout link, and we can shuffle these around in a minute. We also want a post a job link, and we also want a kind of area just to display the currently signed in user. So at the moment it just looks like the following. Not great. Let's go ahead and style each of these up. So we're going to go ahead and set the margin on the x-axis to 4 for each of these. So let's go ahead and pull this class in for each of these. There we go. And the same for this one as well, I guess. Now for this one, I'm going to set the font to bold. That's kind of how we want that to look. Great. And in terms of the outer wrapper here, this is a really small thing, but if I just go ahead and set the background of this to say a blue color, what you'll notice is we've got this aligned here, but this one, because we've got a margin on the x-axis of 4, it doesn't quite line up. So there's a couple of ways around this. You could always get rid of the margin on the right for the last item. That would fix the problem. Or a little trick that I do is for the outer wrapper here, we go ahead and set a negative margin on this equal to what is given for each of these items, and that will also pull that in as well. So it's entirely up to you how you do that, but that's just how I'm going to do that. So let's go ahead and get rid of the blue background on that, because that's nicely aligned up now. And that's pretty much it, to be honest. We're not going to really do too much else for this. The only other thing we want to do is make sure that when we're on a specific page, we highlight each of these items. So for example, on the jobs homepage, we're going to go ahead and use the exact active class to this. Now, if we're on that page, all this does is applies the classes we give in here to this. So for example, we could set text blue to 500 if we're on this page, and you can see that that has turned blue. Let's just test this out with another page. So inside of pages, I'm just going to create a login.view page. Let's create this template out here, and we'll just say login for now, just to keep things really simple. And we can do exactly the same thing for each of these links as well. So I'm going to apply them to each of these. And now when we're on the login page, if we just switch this over to a Nuxt link, get rid of the href and set this to go through to the login page, and we end that Nuxt link there, what we'll see is when we click login, we go over to the login page and then that turns blue. So that's why we have done that. We'll switch these over as we get to them. We'll leave the login for now because that's what we're going to work on pretty soon. Let's just check this out on a smaller viewport. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull this over to the right hand side. I'm going to toggle the device toolbar and I'm going to go ahead and pull this in. And at the moment, you can see it doesn't look great. Now, we're not going to be too concerned with the design of this. We're really just focusing on how to pull all of our GraphQL stuff in using Apollo. But to get around this, what we can do is in the overall wrapper here, we can set this to flex items center just to make sure they all line up. And what that will do is it will just pull that in a tiny little bit. And then we can go ahead and set a flex wrap on that just so that nicely wraps down. But of course, you can just fiddle around with this, add a little bit of margin on the logo area if you want to, and style this up how you want. I'll let you go ahead and build the design out how you think it looks best. Okay, let's go ahead and style up our kind of overall header that we want to see on each of the pages. So it's just going to be really basic, and we're not going to extract this out to a component, but it's just going to mean that we have something nice on the page to be able to see what we're doing. So I'm going to create out a class in here of text center, and let's go ahead and set the padding on the y-axis to 10. And inside of here, let's create an H1 and let's just pull over some of the copy that I already created for this. So find the best jobs in the world. And in terms of the paragraph underneath this, let's go ahead and say we're the best job board in the entire world. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. And it doesn't look great at the moment, but let's go ahead and style up each of these elements to make this look a little bit better. So in terms of the text size, let's set this to a 4XL. And let's set the font in here to font bold, and let's go over and have a look. That looks much better. Let's go ahead and apply the some styles to the paragraph tag. For this, we're just going to slightly mute the color of the paragraph, and then we're going to set the font in here to medium. So again, that looks a little bit better. Of course, you could add some margin bottom on here if you wanted to just space that out a little bit. Entirely up to you. Now let's go down and create out another wrapper in here, which will be for the page content. So let's set the margin top to 10, and this is going to be our jobs index. We already saw from the introduction that on the home page, this is going to be where we start to list all of our jobs out, and that's what we're going to get to very soon. But we need to tackle something else, and that is authenticating. So we need to be able to log in and log out as well. So we'll cover that now because that's pretty complicated. Then we can get on with the rest of the features of our job board.